with a falsehood, you're faced with two options. You can accept it or you can reject it. The basis upon which we take one of these actions is a product of our critical thinking capabilities and a desire to know what is true instead of confirming our bias. A lie can travel halfway around the world while the truth is still putting on its shoes. On Brainstorm, we choose the hard truths over the comforting lies. Reason, compassion, skepticism. This is the Brainstorm Podcast.
All right. Hi, and welcome to the Brainstorm Podcast Skeptic Studio, the interview portion of the Brainstorm Podcast, where we talk to a variety of folks with the intent to spread critical thinking, compassion, and skepticism. I'm Cory, and my panel tonight are Sarah.
Hello.
Rene.
Hello.
And the always amazing Dave.
Hey.
We're broadcasting live from Roman Empire Studios in Regina, Saskatchewan, and today is November 9th, 2018. My guest tonight's guest is Kavin Senapathy, author, blogger, and new host for the long-running podcast Point of Inquiry. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
So I guess it's been a couple years since you've been on the show.
It has. It's nice to be back. It's always nice to chat with people again a couple years later and see what's changed, especially, I think, what was it, 2015 last time or 2016?
It might have even been 2015. Yeah.
It seems like 2015 is a lifetime ago.
Yeah, it's been a long few years.
Yeah.
So I guess, what have you been up to since then? Or since we had you on because of your book at the time. So
I'll give you some of the highlights. My kids since then have gotten a little older. They're 7 and 5. We had our Science Moms movie come out in the fall of 2017, which has done really well. For those of the listeners who might not know about Science Moms, it's a short crowdfunded documentary, 29 minutes long, that's available for free on YouTube. And it follows me and 4 other moms, 3 of whom are scientists and 2 of whom, including myself, are communicators in our quest to raise children with evidence whenever possible, rather than the fear and the hype that's so common today. And then I also have to give a shout out to SciMoms.com, a project that we launched following the success of the Science Moms movie. And we do a blog and comics and a whole lot of other cool stuff. So you guys should check it out. So that's a bit of what I've been doing. I've also been writing, of course, for various outlets about everything from, woo in the pet care industry to mythology around breastfeeding and how that's implemented in policy.
That's interesting. What kind of myths are spread about breastfeeding?
Oh, well, this is going to sound controversial, although I don't think it is, but the idea that breast is best, I think, I don't think, it's actually backed up by quite a bit of evidence, that breast isn't actually a whole lot better than formula. Of course, when you have access to clean water and conditions with which to prepare it.
Right.
And there are also some value-based ways that we inquire or frame our research questions when it comes to something like infant feeding that makes everything a whole lot more complicated. But like I said, I've written about it a few times recently, so do check that out.
Is that on the SciMoms.com?
I do have something coming up for SciMoms.com on breastfeeding, but my latest article on infant feeding was at the Daily Beast.
Okay.
And that was following the Trump administration and World Health Organization conversation around whether or not breastfeeding should be encouraged in the way that it's currently encouraged, which is what I and a growing number of researchers and people in the medical establishment find problematic, which is the promotion of exclusive breastfeeding, that is no other food or drink within the first 6 months of life. It turns out, actually, that in nature, as natural as we find breastfeeding to be, especially in the first few days of life for a mother who has had her first babies, it's not that uncommon for milk not to come in for those first few days, and there can be some pretty serious consequences when that happens. But I could talk about this specific issue all day, and I'm of course not the expert. That's why I consult, of course, with lots of experts when I talk about and write about these issues. For sure.
You must have quite a network of experts that you talk to quite regularly.
Yeah, and you know, I think that's part of the best part of what I do, and what makes it fulfilling and interesting for me is that constant I guess connection that I have with experts. Right. Of course, sometimes I'll interview a source once and never interview them again, but there are some sources that I go to time and again. There are some that I chat with every day, and then of course I have the scientists from the Sci Moms that I chat with, I don't know, every few hours. So.
Nice. Yeah. It's good to have those connections with people who know what they're talking about. Yeah.
We should all strive to have those. Especially because as much as we, as skeptics, want to think that, we understand how to get the right information about everything, and we understand how to essentially come out on the right side of any given issue, none of us really have that capacity within one individual.
Yeah, for sure. Something I've learned in my time in skepticism is, like, I focus so much on learning about how we make errors in thinking that I actually just doubt that I know anything, and I have to refer to experts for everything.
Yes. Yeah, I agree. I mean, it just brings up the phenomena of skeptics naming logical fallacies. If you're on Facebook and if you're in a skeptics group and you go, I don't know, one thread without hearing someone call out a logical fallacy, then
good luck. Eh?
I don't know what skeptics are, but that's what they are right now. And I don't know, it's not always cute.
Yeah. It's the fallacy quite often, right?
The fallacy. Yeah, sure.
So I guess, no,
go ahead. You go ahead. I haven't fully formed my questions.
Oh, sure. I was just going to say, like, bringing up the online skepticism a little bit, what are some of your thoughts on the current state of the movement and some of the divisions that seem to be popping up?
I talked about this actually recently in two different cities. I had quite a bit of travel recently, in Sacramento, for California Free Thought Day, as well as at SciCon in Las Vegas. But at both of these events, I kind of talked about my journey and becoming a skeptic because of coming from a rather unique place, right? I was raised atheist by immigrants from India, and my parents are now atheist grandparents, I guess. Like, they hang out with my kids all the time. But I was raised atheist by immigrants from India, like from birth. Like, if you think of this notion that an atheist is born, right? All babies are born atheists. That was me. Not only was I born atheist, like, as soon as I could talk and ask questions about any existential ideas or questions about mortality, I I had that upbringing from as far as I can remember. So I was raised as a critical thinker, you could say, when it comes to ideas of religion, but I wasn't a critical thinker at all, really. Overall, I'm actually possibly one of the most credulous people you know. So not very long ago, like not even a decade ago, I'm not kidding, and I'm not really particularly embarrassed to admit this, but I've purchased supplements that Dr. Oz recommended. And in my talk during SciCon, I describe in some detail how I've always loved home shopping and infomercials, and I always believed what they said. Like, one of my earlier memories was watching an infomercial about a supplement, and the sellers of the supplement made pretty big claims about how we're all walking around with several pounds of old, stagnant fecal matter, right, in our intestinal tracts. And I remember telling my mother about how we had to buy the supplement. But the point that I'm making to your question about the state of skepticism today, like I'm getting there. But the point that I'm making is that I grew up atheist in Madison, Wisconsin, where you might know that Freedom from Religion Foundation was founded. But I was only peripherally aware of organized atheism and free thought and skepticism until 2011, when I had my daughter, and I was getting all of this information and misinformation and messaging targeted at me as a new mom about how to not only raise my children, but how to protect them from all of these toxins and awful things that are according to the rhetoric coming at them from all sides. And so that's when I found the skeptics movement, because something had to give. I was terrified. And so actually the first skeptic blog that I found was The Skeptical OB. So shout out to Tudor. So then I began devouring skeptics blogs and content for a few years before I started blogging myself. So when it comes to your question now about the state of the skeptics movement, I think that my story kind of speaks to a larger problem in that there may be people who are primed to be critical thinkers or to seek evidence in all aspects of their life, in their decision making, but maybe don't come to the movement for whatever reason. I didn't have a reason, for one, because it just didn't really matter to me a whole lot, to be honest. But also, as a child in a rather unique situation, a kid of immigrants, which in and of itself is a unique and often challenging way to grow up, and also a person of color, kind of navigating the xenophobia that was ever present in the 80s and 90s, and clearly even now. I guess skepticism just didn't really matter to me a whole lot.
Right.
So the point is that there are so many factors and different layers of how this movement works, because the point being that atheism and evidence-based thinking as a mode of inquiry are so broad that it's easy to. I'm rambling here, right? It's a really. Like I said, it's a pivotal time, and we're all kind of thinking about this, and I'm still forming my thinking about this.
For sure.
But you can only attract so many people with the excitement of having arguments on the internet and telling people that they have committed a straw man. Yeah. And you can only attract so many people with the idea that religion is misguided. Like, it gets old after a while. I guess, what do you guys think?
Well, yeah, like I was thinking a lot today of, specifically, I just got married, maybe going to have some kids, and a lot of my friends have kids, and there's, so much woo and so much, and I'm seeing people that are otherwise, like, I'm a scientist, so I have a lot of scientist friends, and even some of them are like, yeah, this stuff is supposed to help you with this and that, and I'm like, but where are you getting that from? And I don't understand. And then on the other side, I see so many people that are, just anti-vax, just dug in, and I don't know, again, yeah, we can argue on Facebook, and there's nothing I love more than being a smartass and, sciencing the shit out of something to prove my point. But that's not necessarily helping them kind of come to the other side. Like, we know we're right, but they also know they're right in their own minds, right? Like, they think that we're completely nuts and that we're just shills for big pharma and all of that. Like, in all of your travels and your speaking and your all of the work that you do as a communicator, have you found kind of the magic recipe for breaking people of that staunch belief in woo and magical thinking and fear-mongering? Or is there a certain sect of those people that, are just unsavable, but let's try and at least bring the fence-sitters over?
Yeah, so I think that our satisfaction in kind of sciencing the shit out of something is, I mean, it's always fun, and it often feels good.
Detrimental to the cause as a whole.
Right. But ironically enough, the science of communication strongly suggests that filling in people's information deficit with science and with evidence not only doesn't necessarily work, but it sometimes backfires, right? Yeah. So we have to, trust is a big deal, and trust isn't necessarily something that can be achieved using a formula. Actually, it is not at all something that can be achieved using a formula. And that's part of what we are doing with Sci Moms, is establishing that trust, because, for better or worse, we all know that having or giving birth to a child doesn't mean that you've given birth to a PhD, right? Yeah. Like, you don't get expertise from having a child, although there are plenty of experts who have children. So this idea of mommy instinct, I guess, really bugs me, because not only because it's sexist, but because it makes no sense. But now to your question of how do you sway people who have fallen into that woo rabbit hole, that you're right, there definitely are people on any extreme of any movement, whether it be anti-vax, anti-GMO, anti-preservative chemicals, et cetera, who are just so out there, you're never going to sway them, and they may not even be worth the dialogue. But then there are some who are kind of not that extreme sect, but right next to them, kind of very far to the side of believing in woo, that you might not be able to sway those people either. So you have the extreme, say 2%, and then next to them, the 3 to 4, that you might not be able to sway, but having the conversations is worthwhile because there are onlookers who are benefiting from that conversation. So I think one of the things that I've taken away over the years that remains true no matter what is that you gotta remember that there are people watching, people who are fence-sitters who may not ever say anything, and they might not even make their presence known, especially when it comes to online conversations, but who are taking away a lot from this dialogue between someone trying to talk, I guess, sense into someone who's saying that, vaccines have bits of fetus in it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Kind of argue for the audience, kind of.
Yeah, instead of the individual.
Yeah, something that I've been learning about is like far right extremists, And they often refer to them as believing in like an alternate reality. And I wonder if there's like a level of that for all kinds of different things, like anti-vaxxers live in a different world than we do. And there is almost no way to break through that barrier.
Yeah, I would say that in the extremist of cases, at least again from people I've interacted with in person and online, you're not going to and they're not. So you can throw every literature, like every journal article at them, every lit review, every expert saying this.
It just doesn't matter.
And fake news.
Yeah, and that I fucking hate that term because everybody can just use that for everything when it's not actually applicable. It's like, no, this is real news. You just choose not to believe it. Doesn't mean it's fake. And
it's always the strangest thing when those people somehow. Like there have been people that have argued with me for years over genetic engineering, for example, which is a whole other can of worms. But I, at the beginning of this year, wrote an article that was critical of Monsanto. And after I wrote that article, 3 or 4 of these staunch anti-GE type of folks came to me privately and said, oh, hey, now I kind of trust you. We can have a conversation. And I'm like,
you're not
really?
a shill for Monsanto anymore.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I did. Yeah, I'm like, I told you guys all along that I wasn't, but okay, there you go.
Now you believe me.
The evidence is there. You publicly decried them.
Well, yeah. The evidence is in my plan. Yeah.
The enemy of my enemy is my friend.
I was going to say that. Yeah, exactly. 100%. So do you, I don't know how active people are in sending you like private messages through your Facebook or Twitter, but if so, do you get a lot of people saying like, hey, because of the things I've read, I'm no longer that woo person, or do you just get a ton of hate, or?
I actually, I get hate, but surprisingly, post 2016, now that I've become more vocal about what some people call SJW issues, now I've gotten a lot of hate from people who I considered my allies, like pro-GMO type of people. So it's really messy, and I'm still trying to make sense of all of it. But I do get messages from people who have changed their views on issues around food and agriculture and medicine. And the interesting thing is that sometimes these people will point out, well, here's what you said that changed my mind. And that's always so different for everyone.
Yeah.
So
that's interesting. Yeah. Yeah. And I often wonder, like, for every 5 people that you converted, how many did we lose? Like, do you think there are people that are like pro-GMO, pro-vax, pro all that good stuff that still get sucked into the hole? Or do you think it's only people that were, just unaware or ignorant of anything, and just whoever got to them first is the camp they kind of went with?
Can you repeat your question? Are you asking?
Yeah, like how you said you were, primed to be a critical thinker, but kind of weren't in some ways, just because you saw infomercials or something. Do you think if somebody, is it very common or common at all that people who are pro-vaccination or pro-GMO and are all on board with those things, that by seeing, the avocado wolves and all those people, that get swayed to their side and send them messages saying, oh, thank you for your stuff, I've seen the light and I now believe vaccines are bad?
I don't know if it goes the other way.
Yeah, I'm truly curious.
But I think it's just, I wish it was that, we could delineate it that clearly. The GMO, I keep coming back to the GMO dichotomy of pro versus anti, right? Like, so I guess you could ask whether someone who's pro-GMO could be swayed by David Wolf and then become anti-GMO. I don't know if that's the case. However, I myself, I would, by a lot of measures, one of the leaders in the last couple years of the movement that you could call the pro-GMO movement, which I don't really like. And the more that I've been part of this, and I talked about this in Sacramento, the more that I don't think that I'm pro-GMO. And I didn't even need David Avocado Wolf, to convince me of that. And I'm sorry, I just opened up a massive can of worms. But maybe you guys, the video of my talk in Sacramento will be up next week sometime, and I talk all about it. I mean, I'm still very pro genetic engineering, but I think that the term GMO has just become a massive distraction from really tackling what we want to tackle in the food system, and ultimately championing policy and worldviews that align with values, at least the values that I brought, or the values that made me quote unquote pro-GMO were values of scientific inquiry, but also values like sustainability and social justice. And the thing with an issue like GMO is that it's so broad. It raises questions of corporate control of our food system, of power imbalances, of health issues, and so on and so forth. So it's really hard to boil all of that down into something like GMO. And then as someone who's arguing for GMO, argue that, hey, genetic engineering is safe and everything is genetically modified, so why are you guys against it? Like, it's not working for me. It's not working for me, but I'm still figuring it out.
It's a weird balance to strike. Like, I'm not even sure where to go, like how to do it either. Like, it's so weird.
It's so weird. I mean, I gave a talk in Washington, D.C. recently on the concept of clean eating. And I mean, clean eating, I mean, what are we eating dirty things if we're not avoiding certain chemicals? But the thing is, when you actually look at polling data of consumers and what clean eating means to them, it doesn't really mean necessarily the avoidance of chemicals at all. It means everything from sticking it to the man to a return to nature, right? So the tip of the iceberg, there's this infographic from a specific group that did this polling that showed that the tip of the iceberg is about issues like chemicals. But when you go down, it's about so much more. It's about values. And so to take a skeptic's tack to arguing about these issues just doesn't work and backfires.
It, like you say, like it is only touching on the chemicals side of tip of the iceberg, right? I did clean eating for a long time back when I was first getting into weightlifting, and it was a whole different thing than what it's viewed as now.
Now you can go to Panera and get like a clean cinnamon bun that's like full of added sugar, but it's real sugar. So there you go.
Not that
you're never gonna find a bodybuilder who eats clean in that way, right? There's no clean cinnamon buns.
Depends on what kind of body they're building.
So, you recently were at CSICon in Vegas.
I was.
And I guess you saw a bunch of people and interviewed a bunch of people for the podcast you're going to be doing.
I did, yes. So along with Jim Underdown, the two of us are the new hosts of Point of Inquiry. So I was in Las Vegas for SciCon just 3 weeks or so ago now, and I got several very interesting interviews under my belt, which will be coming out soon. And I don't want to give too much of it away, but I did get to interview people like Carl Zimmer, the science journalist who's known quite a bit recently for his writing on heredity. And then I also got to talk to Professor Massimo Paolucci, who gave a talk on the variety of scientisms and the limits of science. And then also another very cool one, fun one, was Adam Conover of Adam Ruins Everything.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That is fun.
Yeah. Yeah, that's pretty good. So you posted something on your social media about Stephen Fry's talk. So I want to ask you about that and what was happening there and what was your reaction? Right.
So at SciCon in Vegas, on the last day, a couple days after my talk, Stephen Fry was there, and he was the recipient of the Richard Dawkins Award for Reason and Science. I believe it's called the Richard Dawkins Award for Reason and Science.
Okay.
And actually, this was my third time going to SciCon, and it was my husband's first time because he wanted to come to Las Vegas to get his book signed by Stephen Fry because he was a big Jeeves fan. So it was a very big deal for him, and we had a great time. And SciCon, I should say, as always, was a great time. The speakers were great. There's a great fun energy there, a sense of community. So I'm just prefacing what I'm going to say about this, what happened on stage with Stephen Fry. So Richard Dawkins spoke for a few minutes and then presented this award to Stephen Fry. And then there was a sit-down conversation between Dr. Dawkins and Stephen Fry.
Okay.
And it was pretty interesting, fascinating. There was a nice video, a mashup of some of Stephen Fry's amusing and brilliant and fun commentary on atheism and on religion, which was great. And then, and I'm paraphrasing a little bit here, but the video is online. Richard Dawkins asked Stephen Fry for his thoughts on the regressive left.
Oh, geez.
And as soon as he said that, I'm like, oh, okay, here we go. Let's see what he's going to say. And it seemed unnecessary for Dawkins to ask that in the first place.
Kind of out of the blue, almost.
Yeah, to me at the time. And Fry responds that that the situation is like a Grand Canyon. And we were in Las Vegas at the time, so it was all very fitting. And Fry says, well, on one side, we have the alt-right, and they're spewing all kinds of awful bigotry and racism, and of course, that's awful and unacceptable. And then on the other side of this Grand Canyon, we have this regressive left, which he also called the illiberal left. And he says that inside the canyon, looking up, are, according to him, all of the reasonable people, him included, looking up at these two sides of the canyon in horror. So when he said that, I got this, I immediately got this sense of very fine people on both sides.
Yeah.
And you guys probably remember where that statement comes from. It was Trump after Charlottesville, right?
Yeah.
And that might seem extreme to some people, but this both sidesism right now, as we all know, is becoming, it's more and more people are condemning this kind of rhetoric as absolutely unacceptable because you cannot put, of course we have awful people on all sides of the political spectrum. Of course there are people on the left who annoy the shit out of us. I mean, they annoy the shit out of me. Like, yes, I agree with that. I don't disagree with that. But no, it's not like two sides of the canyon. and reasonable people are in the middle. Like, I find it pretty easy to choose what side of the canyon I would be on if it was a canyon. That's a whole other question. But then what happened next is, and this really disappointed me, because again, like I said, my husband was there to kind of see this guy that he really is a fan of, and I too am a fan of, and so the next thing he says, and he says it with this kind of air of almost ridicule. He says, if I have to hear about the patriarchy or cis white privilege one more time.
Oh, man.
And at the time I heard him say, I thought he said,
we have to hear a white guy say stuff like that one more time.
And think of the optics of this. This isn't just any speaker, but this is Dawkins and Fry, who has just received an award. And so I thought he said cis het privilege, but he actually said cis white privilege. And in that moment, I was just so disappointed and frustrated, because I believe that organizations like this and the skeptics movement on the whole, again, are at this pivotal point. And as skeptics who value evidence-based inquiry, we know whether we need to call it the patriarchy or not. I don't see the problem with it. We know that the patriarchy exists and is real. We know that white privilege and cis privilege and all kinds of privilege are real. The data support that, and I know that you all agree. and so, I believe that you do. Feel free to correct me there.
No, I'm on board.
But I'm just so tired of skeptics using terms like reason and logic as more. They've almost become buzzwords more than any true form of pursuing the truth and pursuing humanist values and justice, wielding this truth. I mean, how many times can a person with this much power take digs at this? And so that's why so basically what happened is my husband was sitting next to me. I'm in the back of the audience. A couple other friends of mine were also sitting there, and I said, listen, I've had enough of this. I'm not going to sit here, so I'll see you later. And I walked out, and I posted about it. And I mean, what's been really promising and what's been positive coming out of this, and I have had some conversations with people within Center for Inquiry and will be continuing these dialogues, but so many people have come forward, not only publicly, but behind the scenes to chime in and say, listen, I agree with you. Like, this is enough. And there's not a whole lot more, I think, that we can put up with this.
Yeah, I think I saw that same thing, and we spoke about it on a previous podcast of ours, with the whole Kavanaugh thing. Being in a lot of skeptic groups, it's, well, we're skeptics. We have to, you're innocent until proven guilty, and there's no, the evidence doesn't support a conviction. And it was like, okay, he's not being tried in a court of law, first of all. And the evidence says that false accusations are exceedingly rare and that rape is very underreported. And that, like, all of these other things, but it's still just like black and white. Like, no, we don't have proof, absolute 100% proof. So therefore, it must not have happened, and we have to believe him. And it's like, from a skeptic side, yeah, I mean, technically that's correct, but from a humanist side, or you still want to take the whole body of evidence, not just pick. Okay, she doesn't have video recording of it happening, and say, yeah, but you know what? I still kind of believe her because I know, what it's like to be a
you
woman.
know how these things work.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like so many men, and even like I had a coworker of mine who's female, and she's like, well, I just don't know why, she didn't say something sooner. And I'm like, oh, geez, hun, like you're so lucky to have never been in that situation to not realize. But so many of us, myself included, have not come forward with things because that's how you're going to be treated. And we all got to see that play out on a national stage, like international stage, because everyone was watching, right? And it's like, it really taints kind of that whole skeptic thing when you see things like that, like bashing the regressive left or whatever they call it, and it's like, you can get where they're coming from because they just don't understand, I guess, and they're not seeing the proof in front of them, I guess, is what they're having issue with. But that doesn't mean it's not actually happening and it's not actually true, right?
Right. I mean, I agree that as skeptics, there's this instinct to always demand evidence, but demand a specific type of evidence that is far more narrow than what evidence entails, right?
Yeah.
So I think it's important at this point, like, I think we have moved past Bigfoot. Some people might disagree, but, now that, assuming that we've moved past Bigfoot, we now have to fight the instinct to dismiss people's experiences because we personally haven't seen the evidence, and to dismiss data just because it's data that we don't like. I mean, cherry picking is a problem in skepticism. Let's admit it.
Yeah. Well, and like, on one hand, you can't accept anecdotal evidence as, real, true evidence, right? Like when lady says her child is vaccine injured, it's like, well, okay, but that's not data that we're willing to accept. But then that gets turned around to say like, well, we don't just believe that she was assaulted because she said so, because that's akin to anecdotal. That's not evidence. That's her story, right? So it's hard to balance those two requirements of being a skeptic as what you count as evidence and what you don't.
I mean, anecdotes, of course, are not always worth or don't always merit further investigation, but a lot of times anecdotes are the roots of important questions and research questions that need to be pursued.
So social science uses anecdotes quite a bit as a starting point, or like even as qualitative research sometimes. It's I don't know.
That's heavy.
It's a weird gray area, right? Like where like when claims of rape, I consider the claim to be a point of evidence,
that's
right?
what I was trying to argue, and it's like, you get both sides of the coin. You're hardcore skeptics that are like, no, that's not evident. Like, I can just say the sky is yellow. That doesn't make it true. And it's like, okay, but there's a lot more behind an accusation of rape than, I think the sky is yellow, right? Like without having been there and understanding all of the social and cultural stuff behind
complexity.
Something. It's.
I think the problem is.
Go ahead.
A lot of skeptics seem to try to do it as it's all hard science, right? This is the data. This is the because
that's what we normally tread in.
You can replicate this data, but when you're dealing with something in a social world, that doesn't exist.
Those hard lines aren't there.
No.
Right. I mean, as you'll hear in my interview with Professor Paolucci, I mean, he spends so much of his time talking about this, but I think it's something that all of us can take away and really, really make a part of our approach, is the understanding that not everything falls within the purview of scientific inquiry, especially if it has not yet been researched. I mean, and we can't make blanket statements about anything. And when you were just talking about rape, it's interesting and discouraging to me, especially the conversations that have come up around the Me Too movement and just the political climate in the last couple of years have really exposed, I think more so than ever, at least in recent years, the pitfalls that so many skeptics fall into, and how they fall into so many of the same pitfalls that others fall into who may not hold skeptical inquiry as kind of one of their guiding principles.
Yeah.
So just because we have, I guess the high level, broad takeaway that I keep thinking about is that just because you call yourself a skeptic does not mean you are good at critical thinking.
Yeah, skepticism.
And people are going to tell me, I tell you, like, after the show, I'm going to get off when people are like, Kavin Senapathy presented a straw man of skepticism. No, it's fine, guys. Chill out.
I guess
there's
really
so many people who do that. Like, let's just be real. Let's be real.
I'm like, new enough to I'm a scientist, so I was kind of talking before the show how like I didn't have any hobbies, I didn't do anything before because I was focusing on getting my bachelor's and my master's degree, and that like did nothing else. So I had no idea the rest of the world existed, and only now I'm starting to learn about politics and like social justice, that kind of stuff. And I just assumed that me being a scientist and therefore a skeptic and critical thinking and a good person and wants the best for everybody, I just assumed that all skeptics were also like humanists or like into social justice. And I guess I didn't really see that there was different genres of skepticism until kind of like the Kavanaugh stuff and the Me Too movement and stuff. I'm like, oh, some of you just straight up hate women, but like science. Oh, okay. I didn't think those could happen in the same person, but they totally can't. Like it was really eye-opening to me because I was so naive before that.
Yeah.
Blissfully naive to, I think everybody was just like me and my friends who all got it and are all cool.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, eek. Scary.
Right. Now the question is what to do next now that we realize that there are these fractures and flaws within, what we hope could continue to be a movement, but I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah, it's tough.
I do think there's so many redeemable qualities of people within this movement, and I see it time and again. And so I have a lot of hope, and I don't mean to be negative at all, because like I said, I mean, this movement saved me. I could have fallen down a very bad rabbit hole. Like I could be, I don't know what I'd be doing right now with
homeopathic medicine.
Yeah.
No doctors.
Amber collar or amber
teething necklaces.
Excuse me, I said collar because the most recent thing that I wrote about involving amber was amber colors, because now the pet care industry wants people to repel fleas and ticks naturally using amber.
Yeah.
Yeah, they also have like
for teething is what I meant.
An anti-vax. There's also a pet anti-vax movement, right?
Oh yeah. Like if you're anti-vax for kids, you're
because of pet autism.
Yeah, seriously.
No.
No, really. I'm sorry.
Just assumed it was like the chemicals.
That to you.
Oh man. Yeah. I just assumed it was the chemicals.
Psychologists. You can take your dog to pet therapy.
Yeah, that's
there's
well, I mean, like there's like, dog behaviors that you can like train and learn about. Yeah. But I mean, it bothers me that my vet
homeopathy now.
Yeah, it bothers me that my vet is also a certified acupuncture dog, and I'm like, I really hope you're just doing that for money, because like everything else you say is really on point. So, and I really like you, and you're close to my house. My dog doesn't like car rides, so I'm going to keep coming here. But makes me question your judgment.
I was looking to switch vets in town, and I ended up in this one vet office, and it was full of salt lamps, and I didn't want to judge. I'm like, these salt lamps are cute. But then it turns out that they really did offer acupuncture, and I'm like, see, like my instinct was correct.
Yeah.
If there are salt lamps in a vet office, they're offering dog acupuncture.
See, and before I knew what salt lamps were, I liked it because I have like a rock collection and any minerals that look cool. So I'm like, oh, that's so cool. And then I'm like,
they're pretty,
wait.
yeah.
Yeah. And I'm so glad I didn't buy one because I'd be supporting that nonsense.
I'm pretty sure that my dogs would just lick the lamps because they're so
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's straight up is, yeah.
Yeah, it's like, I don't know. It made me think of like essential oils smell good sometimes. Like,
yeah, for sure.
But
I like it hurts me
Amber
to
necklaces
buy
are pretty.
them now. Yeah, or like I think you posted something like you wanted to buy tea, but one that didn't claim 20 million health benefits, right? And it's like I don't want to support this nonsense. I just
can
want
a girl
tea.
just get some lemon ginger tea?
Right?
You can't. The answer is no.
You go buy ginger. You do.
I had to get
tea.
the one with probiotics because I just really wanted the tea, and the only one they had was the probiotics. I'm like, fine.
Yeah. It's the least wooey of it. It's like, I don't need probiotics in my tea, but
at least it's not telling me it's gonna, I don't know.
Cleanse your,
yeah.
So you should have got clean tea and just bought your own ginger and lemons and, brewed that yourself.
I should have.
But then you'd be supporting the like clean thing. There's just no winning.
No.
I don't want to take the extra steps. I want convenience without woo.
Right. Yeah.
I don't think that's too much to ask.
But the thing is, it's all marketing because I work in a restaurant and I laugh every time we bring in tea for the restaurant. I see it's stamped gluten-free and non-GMO. I'm like, it's tea. I hope it's gluten-free.
Yeah.
What the hell? But
sometimes you want a little thickness and viscosity to your tea, so that's why you want the gluten, just for that gumminess.
I mean, as somebody with food allergies, I appreciate a handy, like, symbol to things, but, like, because, I would never suspect that there would be peanuts in tea, but I'd be comforted by the fact if there was a peanut-free symbol on a box of tea. I'd be like, oh, okay, well, good to know. But then it's like, should I have been worrying about all those other teas I've been buying? Have they been manufactured in a facility that processes peanuts? Because shit, now I need to worry about that kind of thing. Yeah,
no,
so
that's a major allergen. So if it was, they'd be on there. But it's still, I still find it quite funny when it's like, gluten-free. Well, fuck, I hope so.
Yeah. Or like bags of salt that are non-GMO and stuff. You're like, it's just sodium chloride. Like you can't, it doesn't have genes. So.
Yeah, food labels, man.
Yeah, that's another whole can of worms.
Yeah, that's right.
Save that for another show.
Do you,
I'll come back.
Yeah. We'll have to book you for, after the new year sometime.
Yeah.
Do you have any other new projects coming up on top of the podcast?
Let's see. Is there anything I can talk about?
Is that not enough for you? She's not busy enough? She has to have more?
Thanksgiving's happening and I'm not going to cook.
That's a good call.
Right, American Thanksgiving.
I have quite a bit of writing coming up. We are, if anyone is interested, Sci Moms is now, or will always be, but is starting to accept submissions for guest posts. So whether or not you are an expert, if you think that you might be able to contribute some science-based, parenting-related posts to Sci Moms, just check out scimoms.com and you can see the guest blogger submissions, and that'll come to me and our other managing editor, Jenny Splitter. So we'll be working on that.
Cool.
And what else?
Yeah, watch Sci Moms, everyone out there, if you haven't. It's awesome.
Yeah, watch Sci Moms. And then there, of course, new Point of Inquiry episodes will be out, and then the rest you'll just have to wait and see.
When does that start coming out?
It should be in the next, I want to say couple weeks, for sure. But yeah, I have several interviews that are kind of in production now.
Sweet.
Are you doing all the production all yourself, or I guess you have a partner?
Not. Yeah, well, I have a partner, and then we have someone at Center for Inquiry who is doing all of the editing and the other work that I don't know how to do. So, yeah, I'm very thankful for that.
That's awesome. Yeah. It's nice to have somebody who can do your audio stuff for you.
Yes, definitely.
Right, Dave?
Oh, there's a curtain.
I'm busy chatting in the Discord. So.
Oh yeah.
I'm just kidding.
No, right on. So, I guess where can people find your stuff? Besides SciMoms.
SciMoms. Really, I am kind of everywhere. So just kind of, if you're in, an online forum, just expect me to be there. Every now and then I'll be in a Facebook group and I'll comment on someone and they'll be like, "You're here." And I'm like, I'm watching everything all the time. So if you want to find me, just say my name and I show up. No, I'm just kidding. Well, not necessarily. Who knows? Find me on Twitter at Senapathy. And then I have a Facebook page, Kavin Senapathy, and then, SciMoms, and I'm just around. I'm on the internet.
You don't have your own website yet?
I don't. I should. I have my domain name.
Again, is this not enough?
Yeah, just kind of old school. If somebody, if anyone wants to help me with my website, hit me up. I should have been doing that. See? Good reminder.
Just everybody has a website now, so
I'm very together. Just so you know, I'm on top of everything.
Perfect. That's the way to be. Yeah. Well, I guess we will let you go, and we'll go to a break. Thank you very much for joining us.
Yeah. Thanks for having me again.
This was a good chat.
Yes. Yeah. Let's chat again when we figure these issues out like a little bit more.
Oh, okay.
I think next year, this time, we'll have it on lock, and then we'll know what to do next.
Oh, okay.
You're very optimistic.
Everybody get to work.
Yeah. Let's do it.
You're way more optimistic than I am. Awesome. Have a good one.
Thanks.
You too.
If you like what we're doing and want to help us keep the lights on, go become a patron at patreon.com/brainstorm podcast. You can hear the bonus half hour that we record every episode and get a shout out when you support the show. Become a patron for just $1 an episode at patreon.com/brainstorm podcast. Or you can support the show by ordering a t-shirt, mug or other gear from our store at caffeepress.ca/brainstorm podcast gear. If you can't afford to become a patron or buy gear, then why not give us a rating or write a review on iTunes or Stitcher? Every rating makes it easier for people to find us. Thanks for your support.
Hey there, I'm VP Quinn of High Level Games, a tabletop role-playing game podcast and web community. I and my trusty sidekick and producer monkey, the assistant to the regional manager, Joel, hello, talk about various pen and paper role-playing game products in an always interesting and sometimes funny way. We are a for gamers by gamers podcast that looks at how to make these games more awesome for the fans. Check us out on iTunes, follow us at HLG_corporate on Twitter, like our page on Facebook, or just go to highlevelgames.ca for more information. High Level Games, the industry's first choice in taking your games to the next level.
So we got a little bit of feedback. Our conversation on Elizabeth Warren's DNA got a little bit of feedback from at Marcia Bernathy. She said, sorry, I don't want to assume anybody's gender. They said, at Brainstorm Pod, portraying Senator Warren's DNA controversy as just a family story or much to do about nothing is false. Watch Annie Linsky on Democracy Now! Here, and she shared the link. She was portrayed as a minority hire at Harvard Law and changed her ethnicity with HR. And I looked this up, and I'm afraid that our listener is slightly mistaken. According to the Boston Globe, one of the Randall Kenny, who was in charge of recruiting minority candidates at Harvard Law School, said she was not on the radar screen at all in terms of a racial minority hire. The Boston Globe reported that it examined hundreds of documents and talked to 31 law school professors from that time, and only one said her Native American heritage was discussed at all. I will provide that link.
Yeah, because that was what I read when I was saying that she identified that way kind of after the fact. It was never part of her hiring.
Right.
It was kind of something that came up after the fact.
Yeah. And actually, even the transcript from the Democracy Now! Link, like I read the transcript. I didn't watch the entire video. I read the transcript of the Elizabeth Warren segment, and it said the same thing. Like it was using the Boston Globe as their source as well, because that was the main source for most people's information. They went on to say, and making this as something that was brought up to smear Democrats close to an election is also false. This drama was literally generated from her own mouth. Quite literally. And I wanted to say that this is true and not true. It's a misunderstanding or misrepresentation. I don't know of what we said, because we were saying that it was Donald Trump's behavior, or like called her out, and she made a political mistake. Yeah, she made a political mistake. We said that. Yeah. But it was Donald Trump who brought her on to doing this.
Yeah, I don't think she would have ever done that if she hadn't been called Pocahontas.
Yeah.
And he made that claim about,
I can't remember, but
donate money if you
we did
prove it or whatever, yeah.
We did mention that she did make a
oh,
deal
yeah,
out
she
of
should
it.
have not taken the bait,
Yeah.
but she would have never done it
she made
had
a
that
deal
bait
out of
not
it
been there,
a bit
I'm sure.
beforehand.
Right.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
But yeah, it was something that she made a mistake about and should never have brought up. But Donald Trump then goaded her into further action by claiming that he would give $1 million to a charity or whatever, which obviously everybody who knows Trump knew he would never do. But I think we discussed all of those nuances in the episode. Another one, they continue. It reminds me of the Hillary DNC and the leaks hacking in 2016. None of it was found to be false. Yes, it was politically motivated and strategically planned to damage, but it wasn't false. And I think the two issues are actually unrelated. Warren didn't manipulate or lie and was goaded into action that was unreasonable. She shouldn't have done by Trump. But as for the DNC leaks, those were legit, and the DNC, they were damaging, but they were legit. Like that was, I don't know what else to say. And then there was one last tweet from them. I find it problematic when people who I get the impression are progressive that discounts things like this. We should hold people we support to a higher standard, not lower. Otherwise, how are we any better? And I do think we're progressive. I also think that the truth matters. And in this case, Warren was actually just reporting what her family history was based on the things her older relatives told her. She wasn't using it to her advantage. And it seems to me that the level of accountability we should hold her to for bringing this DNA stuff forward after being called out by Trump isn't that high.
Well, and you did, like you all said,
right?
Yeah, bad move, man. Like,
and we, I'm pretty sure I can't remember exactly, but we basically said, well, it's bullshit,
right?
It's bullshit.
Yeah, that too. It's you're not Native American because of that DNA test. Like, you don't identify with that culture at all. I'm pretty sure we called her out as
bullshit, but I can't quite remember.
Yeah, well, we've mentioned before on the show, and we mentioned during that episode that culture can't be determined by DNA.
Yeah.
No. So this is, I mean, that's where our focus was. I don't know what we're supposed to say beyond that, but
I think that's where that sounds like they were kind of saying what I was saying is that I just think she just blew it up. Like, she just took a family story, which we all have, and just blew it up and made
tried to make it into
made
a thing.
Made it a narrative.
Like, you should have just kept your mouth shut. Yeah.
But it's bullshit. But
it is what it is.
It is what it is. And that she shouldn't be, I don't think she needs to be dragged over the coals because of it. Call it out as bullshit because that it was. It's bullshit.
Right. Say it's bullshit.
But beyond that,
poor taste.
Beyond that,
is tone deaf. Yeah.
I mean, there's a number of things that you can say. Yeah. I think we said them.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. Maybe I missed something, but in response to the same episode, @Jesse Hoffner said, "I'm supposedly related to G.W. Bush somehow." To which I can only say, I'm so sorry for you. I don't know how else. I'm sorry, man. That seems awful. On YouTube, Christopher Zabo commented on my interview with David Nywert. Great interview. I might buy this book for my grandfather. And it was Alt America, a book on the rise of the radical right in America. And yeah, I recommend everyone buy that book and that many people read it. To be continued 0072 said on our Jordan Peterson is Jordan Peterson an idiot video. He said, "He is a bullshitter, plain and simple, through and through, wolf in sheep's clothing. He's not brilliant nor a deep thinker. Look, if I ask you a question, if I ask you, do you like hot dogs? I more or less expect a straight yes or no answer. Even one or two short sentences as to why or why not. Fine. But this Yahoo and others currently like him that are walking encyclopedias ask a question, but the question takes a good 4 to 7 minutes to ask, and some other fool takes 10 to 20 to give an answer. Does not a great mind make? I mean, for fuck's sakes, seriously, he jumps all around the place." And then he went on into what an example of a Jordan Peterson type answer. I'm not going to repeat it. It's exactly like Jordan.
Long, yeah.
It's exactly like Jordan Peterson would say. Like, it's all over the place, and it's kind of tangentially related to the initial comment.
I don't even know this guy either. I'm not in
Jordan Peterson.
Yeah,
he's a joke.
I've heard things. But I've heard enough to be like, I don't want to get even into
He's
it.
kind of a hero to the incel movement himself.
Yeah.
So, on our video about Side Thorn and Conspiracy Granny, Angel B. Yes,
That's an old one.
Yeah. Said, quote, "Who cares? ... Nothing is changing anything concerning conspiracies of any sort, LOL." Okay.
True.
That's fair.
Yeah.
It's not like facts ever leak into their world.
No, that's right.
Lawsuits, maybe.
Yeah. That's
Jail
right.
terms.
Yeah.
But not facts.
Even being banned off of social media doesn't seem to make the difference.
Nope.
All right. New patrons. No new patrons. I want to give a shout out to our top patrons. Destin Doesn't Suck That Much, Daryl Goosen, Aaron Young, William Driver, Positively Skeptical, and the Flying Spaghetti Monster, sauce be upon him. Becoming a top patron means you donate at the skeptic level, which is $5 per episode or higher on Patreon. We have no new reviews, but it would be cool if people went to Podknife, Stitcher, iTunes, or Facebook and gave us a rating, a review, or a recommendation.
That happens.
No more homeopathic beer.
That's right. I just drink water and, well, I still had an energy drink tonight.
And a Coke. A
Yeah,
Diet Coke.
Diet Coke.
So
All
much
right.
better.
Well, 0 calories. Anybody have things to plug?
I don't do anything of any importance.
Okay.
Not
Dave?
anybody what else would be interested.
Plug
in.
sounds like a drug dealer. That's what they call drug dealers now, plugs.
Really?
Is that right?
Yeah, did you know that?
I did not know that.
Of course I didn't know that.
I'm the plug. There's like rap songs like that.
Oh, no.
Learned
that's
something new
terrible.
every day.
I don't think I have anything to plug. It's odd. I mean, I have a lot
Alright.
going on, but nothing like ready to plug.
Nothing pluggable.
Yeah, like things that are going on but aren't happening yet. So
Okay. Well, let us know when they're out.
yes, lots. I've been working on lots of things.
Cool.
Anyway, can't talk about it much.
Okay, I've got a couple things. The first episode of Blue Collar Philosophers is out with my co-host Jason Noble. You can find that at bluecollarphilosophers.com. I'm working on processing the second episode, so hopefully that will be out. And my rant from this episode will be out as a blog on Monday. And the latest episode of Skeptic Voices will be out on Sunday. We recently joined up with Reason Revolution, so you can find us on their website as well as ours now. Make sure to check that out and browse around. You might find some other stuff you like. The link will be in the show notes, or just go to reasonrevolution.org. Let's cue the outro music. For all the things, you can check out the show notes at our website, brainstormblog.net, or on our hosting page at thebrainstormpodcast.com. Thanks to our financial supporters, Kayla, Janet, Kim, Stephanie, Zach, the Utah Outcasts, Will, Aaron, Daryl, Destin Sucks, Bob Glenn, Destin Doesn't Suck That Much, Magnus, several species of small furry animals gathered together in a cave, Positively Skeptical, Rob, the Podunk Polymath, the Flying Spaghetti Monster, Sauce Be Upon Him, Freethinker215, and Larry. If you want to join them and help the show grow, then you can do that at patreon.com/brainstormpodcast, or go buy some stuff at tpublic.com/stores/brainstorm-podcast-gear. Join us every 2 weeks on brainstormradio.net. Our next live show is on November 23rd, and our guest is going to be Dr. Jen Gunter, wielder of the Lasso of Truth. That'll be cool. I want to give a big thanks to Kavin for joining us. You can find more of her stuff at facebook.com/ksenapathy. So make sure to check that out. I want to thank my panel, Sarah.
Hello.
Renee. Hello. And Dave.
Yep.
Thanks, Dave, for our intro music. Thanks to Aaron Rabbi from Embrace the Void for doing the voiceover for our intro. You can find his stuff at voidpod.com. Thanks to Alex Capper-Murdoch for our voiceover for our ads, and thanks to Jason Como for our outro music. You can find his stuff at aloststateofmind.com. All music played is either with permission or under the SOCAN license to play. For more information on SOCAN, you can check out the music license info page on our website, brainstormblog.net. Make sure to tune in to brainstormafterhours.com for the bonus content before it goes patron only. Remember to give us a rating, a thumbs up, or a fave on your podcatcher of choice. Join our Facebook group, like our page, follow us on Twitter, subscribe to our subreddit, sign up on it for the newsletter, share the show, and spread the word. The more you share, comment, and like our stuff, the more it helps the show grow. Thanks for listening, and remember, the truth matters.
This is an opinion-based podcast. Each person on the podcast is responsible for their own opinions, and those opinions don't necessarily reflect the views of the rest of the panel. Any guests or anyone associated with the people on the podcast, such as spouses, partners, children, other family members, friends, or employers. No one person speaks for the podcast with the possible exception of Cory, and he doesn't speak for anyone else on the show. The Brainstorm podcast does not represent the views of our sponsors.